Well, good morning. It is just before 7 a.m. on a beautiful spring morning when Rob Stevens approached me and asked if I would do a presentation for the 2021 Assembly. I naturally said yes. It's a virtual assembly, so I thought, well, what better way to do a presentation than from a canoe on the river. So this is where we are. It's 2 degrees, so it's pretty chilly. The sun's up. It's 6:45 a.m. so all of you stateside will still be tucked up in your beds, but this is the best time of the day to be out on my river. I call this my river because I'm normally only the other person on it, and that's the way I like it to be, which is why I paddle early. It's flowing a bit today, but we'll be in for a nice trip. So what I thought we would do is we would have a paddle along this river. I will introduce you to some of the wildlife, the geography and the history of the river from where it starts and where it finishes. So what I'd like to do is for you to go away, grab a paddle and come and join me on this trip. The only thing I've got to do is go and change the canoe, because in the words of Roy Schneider from the Jaws film, you're going to need a bigger boat for you lot, particularly if Dan Miller gets in, if Benson gets in, and of course Al Bratton. Well, we've got to find some space. So I'll go and change the boat, you grab a paddle and a coffee, and we'll do this wonderful trip together. I'm sure by now you're asking yourself the question, just where are we? Well, you're in the eastern part of the UK, East Anglia to be more specific, and then in an area known as the Brecks. The word Breck means land that has become quickly exhausted. In fact, it's the closest thing that the UK has to a desert. The rainfall is the lowest in the country, summer temperatures can be amongst the highest, and winter frosts the hardest. The sand which overlies the chalk was originally windblown, but trees have since been planted to stabilise the soil. Centuries ago, major sandstorms were common, turning some areas barren and covering others in massive dunes and sandbanks. At one stage the river was blocked, and a stone on Santon Downham Church reputedly marks the height the sand reached. Step back 150 years in time and you would see only sandy heathland, gorse and rabbits. Lots of rabbits. After the Great War, Thetford Forest was established. It is the UK's largest lowland forest at 47,000 acres in size, with vast stands of Scots and Corsican pine trees, laced with tracts of deciduous oaks, birch and larch. This is an area of managed woodland through which my river, the Little Ouse, flows. The Little Ouse, my river, is a beautiful river. It rises to the east of Thetford, where it joins with the River Thet, and then slowly meanders through Thetford Forest to Brandon. To the west of Brandon, the river widens and passes through the low open fen areas before joining its big brother, the Great Ouse, after which both rivers then discharge into the North Sea. The section we are paddling is arguably the most scenic sections of the river, between Thetford and Brandon. The river has historically been navigable all the way to Thetford, where, in the mid-1700s, staunches and locks were constructed to maintain levels and allow barges and lighters to freely access the wharves at Thetford for the import and export of goods and materials. And historic navigation preserves the right for the river to be used today, despite the fact that the staunches and locks are mostly long gone and the river has reverted to a semi-natural state. The last commercial traffic used the river above Brandon in the early 1900s. Since then, the river is used solely for pleasure craft and is only navigable by motorised launches to just above Brandon. Beyond that, it's the world of the canoe. Fantastic. The river runs swiftly and clearly over chalk and gravels and is abundant with fish and wildlife as it winds its way through the forest. We will paddle with the current, stopping off at St Helens, Sandsdown and finally finishing at Brandon. There are a couple of portages, well, carryouts really, to get round weirs, but overall it is a beautiful scenic paddle through the forest. We will be enveloped by the forest, the sounds of birds and the chance to spot otters, deer and raptors. Our final destination, Brandon, has a small slipway where we can get out adjacent to the bridge. The journey would normally take about 4 hours from Thetford through to Brandon, allowing for a stop at the St Helens site for a coffee and a quick snack, and maybe a visit to the bushes for the inevitable. Our starting point is in the middle of Thetford. Thetford was the home to the Iceni, Titian-haired warrior queen Boudica, where she put together her plans to overthrow the Roman invaders of Britain. In Saxon times, the town was the capital of East Anglia and became an important religious centre with a 12th century priory and eventually 22 churches dotted around the town. Historically, because of the heathland and sandy soils around the town, the main industry was the keeping of rabbits for meat and fur. The remnants of warrens and the warreners' properties can still be seen scattered through the forest. The rabbits, too, still remain. Today, Thetford is an unassuming place, having expanded considerably after World War II as a London overspill settlement. Once on the river, it doesn't take long for us to paddle out of the town and reach the edge of the forest, where the environment is so much more accommodating for the person seeking solitude and wildlife.
Well, good morning. Here we are. We're on the river at Thetford. I put in off Canterbury Way, just really to avoid one portage over the weir that I'm just paddling up to. And what we're going to do is go with the flow and get out into the forest. The bit above the weir here into Thetford isn't the prettiest, so that's why I'm starting here. The river's pretty shallow, that's the depth there at the moment, and there's a nice flow on it which is going to carry us through. So let's enjoy our trip along my river. Well, we're moving along quite nicely. We're just coming out of Thetford. A few ducks and swans around at the moment. The housing estate on our right before we get under the A11 trunk road up here and then out into the forest proper. I've changed the boat, and the canoe that we're in is my 1911 Old Town. It's a Charles River double gunnel, which I was given in September last year, 2020, and I spent lockdown repairing and getting back to use. I'll show you some more pictures a bit later as we make our way down the river. So here we are, we're just going now under the A11 road bridge. This really defines the boundary between the urban area and the forest area. Now we're out the other side and moving quite nicely into Thetford Forest. It's now getting quieter. We've moved away from the fishing lakes and out into the forest. It's so quiet, it's quite serene here. I think I can remember watching a Ray Mears programme who was talking about canoe journeys, and he said that travelling by canoe isn't about the start or the destination, it's about the journey, which really is quite true for this trip, because the start in Thetford isn't the prettiest and the finish in Brandon's not the greatest, but the bit in the middle is fantastic. And if I stop paddling and we just drift, you can see what I mean. Good job they split either side of us, otherwise that would have been interesting. Go. Just approaching the Abbey weir, which is up in front of us. You'll see some green buoys across in front of it. This was previously one of the staunches and would have been a lock here that the lighters and the barges would have used to come up, but it's subsequently been changed to a simple weir and a gauging station that monitors the river levels and flow. There were plans at one stage to try and reinstate it, but the cost was so high for the amount of use the river wasn't going to get with commercial and motorised traffic that they abandoned it, having spent thousands and thousands of pounds on a study. They would have had quite significant issues, because by putting in locks again they would have raised the water level, but because bridges are being built, raising the water level would mean that the boats couldn't get under the bridges. So they were in a no-win situation. So here's the Abbey weir we're just approaching. I'm going to get out on the right hand side up here and cart everything round and put in below the river gauging station there, which is on the right. So here we are at the Abbey weir. It's the only carry round that we have to do. I'll show you the gauging station, which is just there. And there's the weir, which is quite limited headroom under that bridge. And then we work out into the forest that way. So got a bit of shuttling to do here in terms of getting around these trees. So we'll come across this sunken bough here, which I hope is deep enough that I can get over without taking the canvas off. Yep, there we go. Got another one here, so I'm going to work to the to the left, but the right of that weed bank there, where there's a good flow going through. And we can just breeze over the weed here and miss the tree that's here on our right hand side. There's another big one down just in front of us. But again, that's been cut off, so it's not impeding access or navigation down the river. You would have heard me talk about navigation in previous presentations that I've done. In the UK, navigation has to be proven for someone to be able to use the river. This river was navigable all the way to Thetford, as there were locks, staunches, etc. So you can use the river. Other rivers where there is no navigation, access for canoeists is difficult and can be stopped. In Scotland the arrangement is different because they have a right to roam, and I'll put a map up that shows the access arrangements that are in force in Scotland against those that are available in England, and you'll see that England is mostly red while Scotland is mostly green. We're just coming here past one of the staunches. This is the remnants of them on my right, and also on the left. So there would have been a set of gates there for the staunch, and that would have been a lock many years ago.
The forest and river provide a great bounty for the nature lover. Deer populate the forest, with 4 main species being found, being roe deer, fallow, muntjac and the majestic red deer. Often they can be spotted from the canoe, although all too often they spot you before you see them. I've often had them standing on the bank just looking at me, as in a canoe they do not perceive the shape as a threat. As you paddle, you will see numerous species of birds, from small tits and warblers to the larger birds of prey, to include red kites, which a few years ago were nearly extinct within the UK, but which have been brought back to such numbers that they are now found throughout much of the country. Common buzzards can also be seen and heard, and in the more open areas you will always see a kestrel or two quartering the land looking for its prey. You will always hear woodpeckers within the forest, and the sound of the cuckoo signifies the arrival of spring. Then of course there is the kingfisher, the turquoise torpedo as I affectionately call it, and my favourite to see on the river, but the most difficult to photograph as they are so flighty and quick. A day without a kingfisher on the Little Ouse is a rare one. We have other alien invaders, the American crayfish, has spread throughout the UK and takes over and dominates the native species, but the otters help keep their numbers in check. And then, of course, I've saved the best for last: otters. The Little Ouse is famed for its otter population. These creatures were hunted to near extinction in the UK many years ago, but through careful management and breeding programs, they can now be found in every county in the UK again. Despised by fisherfolk but loved by naturalists and wildlife watchers, they are the most beautiful creatures to watch. Playful and inquisitive, they are a joy to behold. In a canoe, if you stay still, they will come and see you. That's their inquisitive nature. Most years I can find a mother otter and her cubs on the river, early in the spring, and along the length of the river, sightings are frequent and numerous. At Santon Downham there is an otter nicknamed Vincent, as he is missing his left ear. I will often just tie the canoe up to a tree, sit and wait in a quiet spot, and I'm normally rewarded by an otter sighting. We're working downstream through the forest now towards Santon Downham Bridge from St Helens. Forest on our left, some paddocks on our right, which normally have Highland cattle in. And we've got another tree across the river in front of us, by the look of it, which is going to be a real duck under. But passable. We can get under this one, thank goodness. So again, you're going to have to drop your heads, hold on to your hats a bit, and we'll work our way to the right hand side of this tree. We're going to have to lie really flat. And we're through. Again, we're just working now up towards Santon Downham Bridge, just easing ourselves around the shallows. You can see all the riffles which show how shallow it is here. Through we go, and it's speeding up a bit here because it is very shallow. We can move down past the Forestry Commission Centre on the left hand side, and then we're back out into the forest area in front of us. This tree's been here for years in the river. You can clearly see where it snapped off and literally just catapulted itself into the river and has pierced the bed of the river and just sits upright like some alien invader. Just to the north of Santon Downham is the site of Grimes Graves, a prehistoric flint mine which dates back 5,000 years, being one of the most important flint mines in Europe at that time. Flints were traded throughout Europe from Grimes Graves, without the aid of Amazon or FedEx of course, and flints from Grimes Graves have been found in northern Italy and Austria. The site has the remains of over 400 prehistoric mine shafts, with pits up to 13 metres in depth to reach the prize jet black flint. Flint has continued to be an important industry in the area, with Brandon being the main centre. Flints were more recently knapped for flintlock guns, and also as a building material where fair-faced flint is used to give an attractive finish to local buildings. The Flint Knappers pub and a statue in Brandon are a nod back to the industrial history of the area. Just coming into Brandon now. On the right hand side is the mooring that tends to be the point where most motor cruisers and narrowboats come up to. Very few go up beyond this point, and in fact very few come up beyond Brandon Lock, which is about 3/4 of a mile downstream from where we are now. In front of us we're looking at the gardens of the Bridge Hotel. We just turn the corner up here, you'll see Brandon Road Bridge, which is at the end of the high street, and the end of our journey. There's the bridge coming into view, part old, part modern, been rebuilt at some stage in the past, but typically flint faced on this side. the 3-arch bridge with the slipway where we're going to finish just up to the right hand side. So here we are back in civilization. And as I predicted, our paddle has taken us 4 hours with the stop at St Helens, and that's a nice paddle with the flow on a beautiful day. So I hope you enjoyed my river. I've enjoyed having your company. We've got to go and find a pub now, and that's going to be difficult because they're still shut under lockdown, but I'm sure we can find one with a garden. We can sit in the garden and have a pint, maybe even a pie if we're lucky. So this is our get out. It's a bit of a scruffy old slip that's deteriorated over the years.